Hey Dreamside fans, it's time for another making of video. Last week I showed you how I use 3D sets in Dreamside's illustrations, and this week I wanted to show you something that's a bit of an expansion on that, and that is how I'm using 3D models in the character drawings. And well, the truth is that characters take an awful lot of time to draw, and that's not always because it's just challenging to draw characters and to get them to look good, although that is a big part of it. It's also because there's a lot of tedium associated with character drawing. Like there's this element of it called flatting, where after you have an outline drawn, you want to fill in the base colors of the character, and it's not really that creative. It's just sort of understanding that, well, she's wearing a green shirt and blue pants, and so I need to fill in the green shirt green, and I need to fill in the blue pants blue, and that is not always as simple as clicking the paint bucket tool because it doesn't always work with a slightly more organic outline very well. So that process can be kind of time consuming. And so my interest has been increasing in terms of trying to cut down on the time that it takes for me to draw the characters for Dreamside. And what that really ultimately means for Dreamside fans is that I can get more work done faster, and I can spend more time on the creative elements and less time on the tedious elements. So I think overall it makes something that's just overall better. So I wanted to show you something in the software I'm using, which is Clip Studio, that includes the ability to use 3D models. And these are 3D models that are included with the software already. So I'm going to drag one into a scene, and you can see how it has a posed out 3D model that I can now grab elements of and move them around. So I thought you would just enjoy seeing how this happens here. But because this character is adjustable, let's say, for example, I want to bend the forearm down, and I want to adjust the position of the shoulder. However it is that I want to pose the character out, this is designed to provide artists with the ability to get kind of a nice reference that they can use to draw over if they're having trouble getting a particular pose or something. This is a really great modern feature. And the way that I would work with this is I would make a new layer, and I would turn the opacity down on the 3D layer, and I would just sort of draw over it. Now, this is somewhat useful, but not totally, I guess, a great time saver, because in general, I really believe that you should understand your anatomy and understand enough about drawing your characters that you don't really need to use this sort of reference point. But I suppose if you're starting out and you want to just put something together, the 3D models can be pretty useful for this purpose. But my interest with 3D models really has more to do, as I said, with cutting down on the tedium of some of the more repetitive elements that I'm producing with each illustration, and thus allowing me to get the drawings done a little bit quicker. So I don't really want to use these existing 3D models, and instead what I did was I produced a model for my characters. So I want to show you what those look like. Okay, so I'll drag this in here. This is a model for Sarah. So this is kind of what it looks like. And you can see that I can pose the character out, and I'll show you some of the cooler features here. I can pose the character out, and I can rotate around the character. And so this actually provides me with elements that I can use in my finished drawing. That's very useful. You can see that it's got sort of a base color already, but also check out how I can have slightly more complex designs in the costumes. So like if you look at her sleeves here, you can see that I've got this kind of funky sort of design where it has this kind of pixelization, this sort of graphic, kind of classic comic book thing where it is doing a sort of screen tone fade. Well, that's the sort of thing that if I were to draw from scratch, it would just take so long to draw all of these little dots and make sure that they gradate properly. It just is the sort of thing that I really wouldn't include in a drawing. And you can imagine how I can apply the same logic to, say, a big design on her shirts, or if I want a certain type of pattern pants, or a complex dress or something like that for the character. I really, I don't want to be spending tons of time, on a character that has to be redrawn many, many times, recreating these complex, tedious elements. And that's actually one of the main reasons that Sarah's outfit is relatively simple and kind of just looks like a human body. It's something that makes it easier to redraw Sarah. I think it's a realistic outfit that she would wear on a day-to-day basis, especially if she's spending all of her time in a hospital. They're essentially just pajamas. And so, this does afford me the ability to have slightly more complex and complicated outfits without including too much tedium. And I'm not going to get too much into the technical process of how I convert this into the 2D flat work. But instead, what I want to do is jump right over and show you how this looks in a finished, or near finished, rather, illustration. Okay, so you can see this is the same 3D model right here, but it's gone through a process of paint overs. The face and the head, well, the face is, of course, not visible in this shot, but you can see how I've totally redrawn the hair. With my drawing style for Dreamside, it's very decorative, and I do change the characters around a little bit depending on the needs of the particular pose and the needs of the illustration. Everything is designed to sort of harmonize together, okay? And so a 3D model for the face really isn't all that useful for me because, say for example, I have an angle like this that's a 3/4 view. I might want to morph around some of her features, like stretch her nose out a little bit, make it look pointier, or I might want to reform the hair and put it in a slightly different way for any given pose. And that is something that I have to sort of do on a case-by-case basis. So there's a lot of customization that goes into each drawing. Okay, but you can see the way that I just showed you the sleeves with that texture. You can see how these pose out, and they look pretty fantastic, I think, once they're in the finished art. And so there has been a decent amount of paint over occurring here. All of these wrinkles, well, some of which were in the 3D model, but there really weren't too many of them. And so I would say that this pose came about a lot faster than it would have if I had drawn it from scratch because I used the 3D model. And actually the Dream Girl here is also a 3D model. And so you can see that her outfit is a bit more exaggerated and a bit more complex. I've got this kind of heart-shaped cutout in her back. And, there are certain elements here, like the fact that her finger is pointing up. This is actually a 3D pose. It's just exaggerated a little bit in the drawing. So, the idea here is do once something that takes a long time to do that can then save a lot of time later, and you won't have to redraw the same things again and again and again forever and ever and ever. And so, yeah, time savings galore here with 3D models. Okay, so I just wanted to give you that look at one of the cooler aspects of Dreamside. This is something that I really haven't been using much like the 3D environments within book 1, but with books 2 and 3, I do intend to use a lot more 3D. And so I do expect that the future books are probably going to go an awful lot faster production-wise than book 1 did. So that just means more content, and that means I can get the story done a little bit faster than I could before. So I'm pretty excited about that, and I hope that this is as cool to you as it was to me. Thanks for watching, and leave your comments below. I love to hear your questions about the process. I know this is a complicated one. Working with 3D models involves other software, and it does require a certain amount of expertise in understanding how to model things in 3D and how to rig them out and all of that good stuff. But I'll be sure to answer any questions that I can, time permitting. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.